Good morning, Sid. How's it going?
Good morning, Tiago. All well, you?
Yeah, all good. Can't complain. We've got a few stories here this week, haven't we?
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, the week goes by and you think, oh, it's been a quiet week. And then you look at the stories, there's actually so much has happened in the background.
I know, right? The Bitcoin space is like normal life on steroids. You know, stuff that happens 3 days ago is just obsolete.
Yeah, 10x speed. That's it.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, today's big news was Silvergate, wasn't it? It's everybody's talking about that at the moment.
Yeah, so Silvergate had a massive bank run, and they survived that. You know, to give them their credit, they had enough for everybody, right? But the problem I think they have is that the assets aren't returning. Their share price was down 58% yesterday.
Yeah, big drop.
Big drop. Yeah, I think Coinbase has announced they're pulling out. Not going to use them anymore. So I think I think it's fair to say they're in big trouble. They've said they're assessing their own viability. So this seems to be a big story of the week. I'm still a little unclear in my mind. I mean, yeah, it's going to be bad for crypto. How much of a problem is it for Bitcoin?
It's been very stable today, hasn't it? I mean, it's taken a bit of a drop, I think 4% or what have you.
Yeah, we had a big 4% drop overnight, didn't we?
Yeah, but it's not been, I would have expected a bigger drop considering it's such a big news. And Silvergate is very much established into the industry as the infrastructural back rails, isn't it? Where they provided, from what I understand, financing for a lot of the crypto companies from normal sort of fiat rails.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that could be where the problems come from. I mean, I've heard as well. So, you know, the government, of course, is trying to tie this into crypto and how crypto is so unstable and they don't want contagion coming and threatening the traditional banking system. But I think this might actually be a bit more complicated than that. I believe what they were doing is they were taking short-term customer deposits and then going out and buying long-term fixed income bonds. And so when the bank run came, they had to sell the bonds. And of course, the bonds are in a big bear market at the moment. And so they lost a ton of money on that. So I'm not sure that's actually got anything to do with crypto. I know there are a few other side stories.
Yeah, but there's the stuff happening in the background. And it's been one of the most shorted stock for the last couple of weeks, hasn't it? I think it was number one as the number of shorts against it. And there was a tweet I read which said that somebody had put £13,000 against it yesterday or 2 days ago, and they walked away with about 1.3 million because of the nature of the shorts. So yeah, there's definitely was expected. I think that you're right. They lasted longer than the share price lasted longer than people are expecting. But there's going to be ripple effects. Maybe not directly into Bitcoin, but it will indirectly affect it. I mean, MicroStrategy this morning or yesterday came up with their tweet, which they said, we do have a loan from Silvergate. It's not due until Q1 25. There are market concerns regarding Silvergate's financial condition. But for anyone wondering, the loan wouldn't accelerate because of Silvergate's insolvency or bankruptcy. Our BTC collateral isn't custodied with Silvergate, and we have no other financial relationship with them. So
yeah, I think this ties into the bigger story of the whole crypto space being effectively debanked at the moment, aren't they? I mean, Corey put out there, you know, that Swan was debanked in November from Citibank, and his personal accounts were shut down as well with no explanation given. And we're seeing this happening more and more at the moment. So I think that's the bigger story here. And the question there is, what does that mean for the industry going forward?
I think you and I discussed this maybe a couple of years ago, and as a vector threat, and we said, didn't we, that the only thing I can think of which will be successful is the government somehow managing to shut the on and off ramps for people into the fiat system. And that will be the most effective way they can do it. And you're right, they're doing it now. I mean, in the UK, they've just, I think HSBC has told all its customers that they can't buy any crypto through their credit card, and they cannot transfer any money from their bank accounts to a crypto exchange or company, allegedly. I've not seen, but I've seen a lot of tweets going around about that.
Yeah. I mean, the crazy thing is that it's a completely legal industry. Okay, there are a lot of bad players inside it, but how you can just cut off banking from a legal industry. I mean, we've seen it before, haven't we, with the choke point thing, but it's murky. It's very murky, I think.
And it's murky in the sense, it's quite interesting when sort of you get to the bottom of it. And it's not as simple as the regulators coming in and saying to the banks, you can't deal with crypto directly, or come up with a statement saying that crypto or XYZ industry is illegal. They do it almost behind the scenes by making sure when they do their inspections, and this is what Caitlin Long said at least, that when they do their inspections with normal commercial entities, they'll go and they'll create problems with, oh, we're not sure your senior management would pass with flying colors because they are investing in this company or this industry that is frowned upon in the sort of moral standing of what we believe should be correct or not. And sort of they nudge people from the back doors. Now, whether that's true or not, but there definitely seems to be something like that going on where nobody's coming out and saying, oh, it's illegal, but there's definitely the bank saying, no, we're not going to touch it. So there must be some encouragement coming from somewhere.
Yeah, I think this might end up being one of the overriding stories of this bear market. The fact that Bitcoin went from being unbanked, nobody wanted to touch it, to a few banks coming tentatively into the space. And of course, their order books then just went exponential because there just aren't that many banks willing to deal with crypto, right? And now we seem to be going down the other side of that, and even they're pulling out. So I think the jury's open as to how much that's actually going to affect Bitcoin. I mean, one take is it might increase peer-to-peer purchases, which I think would be very good, but I'm a bit skeptical on that because that's okay when you're talking small sums, but
exactly. When you talk big volumes in institutional sort of transfers of wealth, it's not going to happen.
I mean, MicroStrategy isn't going to come in and be buying, peer-to-peer hundreds or thousands of Bitcoin. That's just not going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Or like companies like when Tesla bought, when they bought, and if any other company decides to step in, it's not going to be possible when you don't have a proper commercial rails to do it on.
Yeah, indeed. So that kind of leads into the whole Custodia thing, doesn't it?
Very interesting indeed, yes.
What do you think about that?
No, just it was sad because so Custodia is a bank that was set up by Caitlin Long, and Custodia applied for a license with the Fed and wanted to be regulated, and they had a very transparent and clear business model. And what they said was, we will back all our customer deposits with 108% cash. So the whole thing that the Fed keeps saying, that people are not having customer deposits segregated from their trading and hedge funds, is the issue here. Custodia did exactly the opposite. They were the role models, and they said, okay, we'll set up something, we'll walk through the front door, we'll set up a proper bank which not only meets the requirements but exceeds it. But they got rejected.
Yeah. And Caitlin Long, I mean, she's one of the legends in the space, right? She's one of the OGs, and she's been on record for years stating that not having full reserve for cryptocurrencies in banks is a huge disaster waiting to be happen, because with the liquidity and the 24/7 nature of the market, along with the finality of the transactions, means you cannot apply traditional banking systems to this cryptocurrency world. And she's been shouting that from the rooftops for years. She was even on record as having gone to the regulators, with proof of fraud from some of these big players that have recently fallen. She was completely ignored.
That was mind-blowing. Sorry, that was insane. Yeah. Carry on, yeah.
No, and now, as you say, they've just been denied. They've been denied access to a Fed master account, and they were doing exactly what the U.S. Federal Reserve is coming out and saying they need to do. They need to have full reserves of the crypto tokens they own. So it's very disheartening. It opens all sorts of questions that we already kind of been talking about, but just how fair this system is. Is it being politicized when clearly it shouldn't be? And it opens all sorts of questions, and it's all just a bit of a downer, really, I think.
It is. I mean, especially when you look at the point where initially the White House, the Fed said that we need clarity, we need transparency. And when banks try to achieve it, then they're shot down. And the problem is we do need, even if the industry is not welcome in the US, we need off and on ramps which need to function. And you'd rather have off and on ramps that are legal and trustworthy and honest than having, it's going to go back to prohibition, where you said, okay, you can't have alcohol, but there was enough bootleg stuff going on in the background to create all sorts of other effects. And that's exactly what's going to happen here. You're going to have people create the back end off and on ramps.
Well,
which
you
are
say
not going to be reliable.
You say you need honest on and off ramps, and that's exactly what you need if you want the industry to succeed, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you didn't want the industry to succeed, you probably wouldn't want those, would you?
No, but the point of the matter is that this is geographical. You can do geographical arbitrage on this. There is no reason why you will stay with the US. I mean, in today's day and age, where every worker can work from home anywhere in the world using a satellite connection, even if internet is not there, I mean, you can't stop people from creating online banks on a computer in a different jurisdiction. There's always going to be a Bahamas. There's always going to be a Bermuda. There's always going to be a Channel Islands. There will be places that will welcome these banks.
Yeah, it's very short-sighted. They're shooting themselves in the foot because this stuff is going to happen, as you point out, right? It's just whether it's out in the open or whether, like you say, it gets forced underground. Now, there are some rumors floating around, aren't there, that the White House is pushing for a CBDC. So is that tied in? I don't know.
That's the big story, isn't it? I mean, that's where you figure out, is this because they want to just shoot the crypto industry in its entirety, including Bitcoin, just to show people, or use the cryptocurrencies and the exchanges like FTX and Celsius to show that the entire industry is corrupt, including Bitcoin, get the people to believe in that, and then centralize the power back again to themselves by creating a CBDC, saying, okay, digital currencies are good, but all these players are not honest, so we will create our own currency that's verified and backed by the central bank of the country. In case of the US, it's the Fed. And I think that's the bit that probably is the real driver here.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. It's difficult at the moment. I'm interested to see where this goes. And I think Caitlin's hinting at the fact that there's a lot more yet to come out of this story.
Yes, and I think there is definitely more to it than meets the eye, isn't it?
Yeah, so that's going to be interesting to keep an eye on, I think, over the coming months.
Yeah, I think this FTX debacle is going to be used as a way of basically cutting the infrastructure that's been established down to zero as much as possible, and they're going to use that as an excuse to come up with all sorts of regulation that's neither welcome nor reasonable.
Yeah, potentially. So it feels like just one of those weeks where everything's coming at you, doesn't it? I mean, we got some new bill in South Dakota as well, I think.
Yeah, so Dennis Porter tweeted this out the other day, and it does. It's interesting because it says that the state of South Dakota is attempting to pass a bill that will exclude Bitcoin from the definition of money. Now, what they're saying is that money does not include an electronic record that's a medium of exchange, which is operated third party. It has to be authorized and adopted by the government. So basically saying CBDCs.
Yeah,
and they're
fiat.
pushing this through.
The only money is fiat.
Correct. Yeah, exactly. And they're pushing this through apparently to 21 states, because if they can get 21 states to back this bill, then you've got a huge segment of the US states that are backing the CBDCs over any other cryptocurrency. So that the battle is brewing, I think. Yeah.
I mean, we've all been talking about this for years now, haven't we? And it's interesting to see it starting. So I'm, in a way, I'm kind of glad it's here. Right? Let's just get it done and see what happens.
Yeah.
And
I just think people don't understand the implications of the CBDC. I mean, the centralization. It's funny because the Bitcoin was created as a decentralized network because it was the need of the hour, and almost since that day, the forces of centralization have just become stronger. Everything, every aspect of your thought process, your sort of life is getting more and more regulated and controlled. even in places which were considered to be free and land of the free and what have you.
Oh, yeah, no, I mean, there's no such thing. That thing's died, unfortunately, a long time ago.
Yeah.
More upbeat news, though. It sounds like the proverbial noose is tightening around scam bankster fraud, isn't it?
Oh yes, that was really good to see. So his not CTO, but his co-head of engineering, Nishad, co-lead engineer Nishad Singh, has basically been charged by the SEC, and he has agreed to help the investigators in bringing SBF to justice. So that's an interesting one.
How SBF still thinks he could get away with this by just doing, his whole, he's just had no idea what was going on and he's so sorry and it was an accident and he didn't really know.
And I want to do is philanthropy. Philanthropy out sort of... It's just a first warning sign for me. It's a red flag. Anytime somebody says, "Oh, I'm just doing this so I can leave this world a better place for everybody else," it just sends a warning signals.
Yeah, completely, right? I mean, that's like the whole Bill Gates thing over like the COVID jabs, right? I mean, seriously, what the hell is that all about? The guy's not a doctor. He's got no qualifications in this whatsoever. He owns a whole bunch of shares in these jab companies. He's going on TV telling everybody this is what we need to do. And then he sells his shares and then he changes his mind. I mean, who is listening to this guy? Where's the cover-up in all this?
You just have to look at him as and see, like, okay, if I'm taking health advice, would I be taking it from somebody that looks like you?
Yeah.
I mean, possibly not.
Oh, man, it's just crazy. But yeah, so I don't know how SBF thinks he's going to get out of this. I mean, most of the C-suite's turned against him now. They're all testifying against him, aren't they?
I think they'll have to. They're all a bunch of kids. And, I mean, the thing is, what's Nishad Singh's role in this whole thing has been, as far as we know, is that he was tweaking the software, the back end, in a way that you could move money between... Alameda could move money out of FTX, which were actually just account holders' deposits. They were not meant to be commingled with the hedge fund side of things. But apparently Nishad Singh tweaked the software to open the back doors. And one of his emails sent to the team was, be careful not to liquidate, because effectively Alameda had an open checkbook, blank checkbook from FTX accounts.
So again,
exactly
this is just another nail in the coffin of the whole, oops, this was just an accident. We had no idea this stuff was going on. It was clearly fraudulent and has been for a long time. And they were making deliberate actions that they knew were illegal.
Yeah, and how SBF is still sitting at his parents' house, I do not understand. I mean, somebody who's done that level of fraud should have been in prison day one, and so
the whole thing is just for show, isn't it? I mean, his SBF's bond for $250 million, and it turns out it's like something in the region of like $500,000 or something in the end. But yet, all the headlines are, biggest bond ever posted, all this bullshit. It's
sound bites, isn't it? Sound bite. And this is a frustrating bit where you've got likes of SBF who are having dinners with Gary Gensler. They've got senators up their sleeve that they're meeting up and sending donations to and rubbing shoulders with, right? And then you've got somebody like Caitlin Long who wants to do things honestly, with transparency for the benefit of the industry, and she can't get a clear answer of what it takes to get her bank approved. She was told to refile with everything. She did everything, got everything in order, refiled, and she still doesn't know why she has been not allowed to have her license. It's just...
And particularly,
smells fishy.
Particularly as we said earlier, that Custodia is already doing everything that the Fed is required, right? I mean, Custodia promised to hold 108% of cash backing up deposits, right? But what's telling is, though, right, everybody's come out against them, right? Everybody, from the White House to the Fed to congressmen, and it's like, why are these people coming out so strongly in favor of this one against this one company, right? It's not
a company that doesn't even exist yet.
Doesn't even exist, right?
Yeah.
So there's signal in there. There's signal in there.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. And you've got the likes of FTX, tops management rubbing shoulders with the people in power.
Who's paid off nearly everybody in Congress.
Totally, yeah. So, very interesting.
Yeah.
Anyhow, it'll be good to see him behind bars and get get a nice little sentence. I'm sure now things are getting harder and harder for them to keep him in on a bail.
I mean, I will say, if we're looking for a positive in all this, is that, it's nice to see the system does work, right? When somebody fucks up, they go bankrupt, and hopefully he'll end up in prison where he belongs. But, we've seen so many companies just disappear in this bear market, or, just explode. And it's nice to see a free market in action. It's refreshing, isn't it?
Yeah. Actually, that's one of my things. I do find, and this is something going back to what Warren Buffett once said, which was like, it's only when the tide goes out do you realize who's swimming naked. And although bear markets are very depressing because your portfolio is not doing as well, your investments haven't done well, and probably you've lost a lot of money by something like the FTX and what have you. But should you just disconnect emotion and look around, this is a great time to see which companies are actually still doing well. And those are your golden companies, because they're either being run well, they make good products or services that people want, and that's the company you want to be investing in. So this is a great time to sort of sort through the chuff and find out where the real quality companies and products lie.
Yeah, agreed. Time for triage.
Yeah. What's next in
next story. It's not really Bitcoin related, but it's still important. So there's a bill in the UK which is going to be brought into law this year. And this is a bit depressing, but basically what the bill does is it orders platforms to use technologies to identify and take down child sexual exploitation and abuse material. It also requires tech firms to, quote unquote, make their best endeavors to deploy new technology that identifies and removes such content. So this is where we're using the whole protection thing again, right? Obviously, nobody wants child sex abuse, right? So if you're against this bill, then, why are you for pedophilia? Obviously is the narrative here. In reality, what the bill does is it will probably hold companies liable for end-to-end encryption, right? Now, Signal have already said they're going to pull out of the UK if this law is enacted, because the government has come out and saying this does not stop end-to-end encryption. But equally, they're saying, well, the companies have to have a way of checking there's no child pornography in these end-to-end encrypted messages they're sending, which is obviously impossible, right? I mean, encryption is binary. It's either on or off. There's no such thing as encryption that kind of works, but some of the stuff you can tell, what's in it.
Or encryption for good causes and bad causes.
Yeah, exactly. 100% right. So, I don't know where this is going to go. I think if the UK does bring this law in, I think that might give a green light for other companies to go ahead with it. I think it would be pretty catastrophic. And you just have to wonder, are they incompetent or do they know exactly what they're doing? My hunch is probably the latter, because nobody can be this silly, right? Nobody can be this stupid. And it's just one more example of our freedoms being eroded before our very eyes. And it just feels like the balance of power of government versus the people at the moment, for whatever reason, is just way too strong. There's no checks and balances on this anymore. And I think, although we live in quote unquote a free society, the problem is that the press are self-censoring. Because the way it works now is if the press come up with awkward questions, they're just denied access. So it's a different system, but you end up with the same press censorship you see in more authoritarian economies. So, yeah, I don't know if you've got any thoughts on it.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a slightly different angle to it. And one is that I totally agree with your point about the press is self-censoring. And I remember last week, I ended up just watching two movies back to back, not back to back, but over the week, which are both related to journalism. And one was the movie called The Post.
Oh, yeah, very good.
About the Washington Post. And the other one was She Said, which is about the Me Too movement and Harvey Weinstein's expose by the New York Times. Okay, they are obviously Hollywoodized and what have you, but the premise is still sound, that journalists took it upon themselves to do some real investigative journalism and come up with some truths that otherwise were being completely hidden from the media and from the public. And that is what you need. I mean, that is the journalism one misses. But then yesterday, my eyes lit up because this lady, I don't have it in front of me, but she was she's just exposed the text messages, WhatsApp messages that have gone between the ministers in the UK government, right? And that has created a serious... I think the Telegraph is the first newspaper to have started exposing these text messages and how the COVID policy came into light, and what was the discussions going on behind the scenes between politicians about the lockdowns and what have you. And to me, that is refreshing to see that obviously the minister has said that's a breach of trust, that she was supposed to write his letter and not exactly release all those messages to the public. But she said, no, it had to be released because it was in national interest. And the inquiry that's been going on for finding out about lockdown and the causes behind it is going to take 10 years, by which time it'll be whitewashed and things would have changed. So to me, that gives me a little bit of hope that as long as there's good journalism going on, and there are still people out there who are willing to stick their neck out and do the right thing, I think we've got hope.
Well, I hope you're right. I mean, we just certainly need more of that. I haven't seen these messages, but I presume they're particularly damning. Are they about... I think it's from the UK Health Minister at the time. Is that right?
It is, yeah, it is. And that is more coming out every day. I think they're releasing a tranche of them and talking about other ministers obviously are involved now because their messages are in there. So it'll be interesting to follow that space. But the main point I'm trying to make is that there are still good people out there who are willing to take a chance and put things, make sure the world knows about what it should be, the news, correct news, rather than just put their own little agenda to it. Yeah. And I think the media companies can learn a lot from that, by learning that if there's any hope and they want to save their newspapers, they want to save their news channels, they need to start giving the real news. Not sensationalism on one side and not the government spokes voice on the other side, but the centrist view of what is right and what is not right, what they find true, and then should just expose it.
Well, remember when CNN basically just imploded, didn't it? I think it was after the Joe Rogan episode on, what's that CNN anchor called? Brian something, the other fat guy with no hair. And CNN just imploded. They had their CNN online thing, and that was like the most expensive launch ever, $300 million or something, and it lasted basically 3 days or a week, and then it was just shut down. And they decided that they're having a change of tack, and they're going for less editorialism and more sort of news. I haven't heard anything since then. Is that actually happening? I wonder. I don't know if you've heard anything on that one.
No idea. I don't follow mainstream media, sadly. Try to stay clear of it, because that's the other thing. It's a lot of doom scrolling as well, and you almost think that there's an element of there has to be a balance. But what's interesting is, sitting from where we sit, you see the politicians can't see the difference between right or wrong. And you see the news channels can't see the difference between right or wrong. And you think it shouldn't be this hard. If people like you and me, and majority of the people we speak to, can see it, why can't they see that there is everybody talks about, people are getting angrier. There's discourse amongst the masses. But yeah, figure out why that is.
Yeah.
So anyway, this lady's name is Isabel Oakeshott, and she released Matt Hancock's messages.
He was health secretary, right? During the
sorry,
yeah,
he was the health.
Yeah.
So just saying that gives me hope. As much as there are news channels that would obviously never talk about what's really going on, but thankfully there's still some people out there.
And let's see what this end-to-end encryption does, right? I mean, again, it'll just be the average man on the street that gets done with this, because if it does end up banning end-to-end encryption, the people that really want to use it or whatever will just go onto the unregulated markets. They'll download Signal, from one of the other app stores that isn't going to be regulated.
Well, this is what I was thinking. I mean, the people they're really trying to stop from using end-to-end encryption, the ones who they want to sort of either spy upon or keep tabs on, 90% of them will be smart enough to figure ways around this.
For sure. This isn't rocket science, right?
Exactly.
You just have to know how to sideload another app store.
Yeah, you just need to give it to a teenager. Teenagers know exactly how to circumvent most of the stuff that's imposed on them. So, yeah. Anyways.
Yeah, so it sounds like more of a power grab for me, more control over the people. But let's see.
Yeah, I think it's a failing effort. I think it's going to implode in their face, but hey-ho.
What else we got?
We got some good news as well, haven't we?
Have
to
we?
finish off this episode. Yeah,
Tell me more.
So you got the Zappo Bank, which is based out of Gibraltar, and it's part of the SoftBank, and they have decided to integrate the Lightning Network into their banking. So that's a really good news. And the thing is, the funny side of this is that they actually cancelled their license in the US because they said lack of regulation is one of the reasons we can't do business there. So they've got a bank open in Gibraltar, integrated the Lightning Network. They say you can make high volume transactions without spending too much money. And just give you an idea, the Zappo claim that the peak of their custodianship of Bitcoin, they held more than 800,000 BTC.
Wow.
So I think that's about 4% of the entire BTC at the time.
Wow.
They said so, and it got a response straight away from Caitlin Long. She said, "Well, that happened faster than expected. A bank now offers Lightning Network payments. It's offshore, so out of the U.S. bank regulators' direct reach, shows how wrong U.S. bank regulators are to send all this activity offshore instead of inside the U.S. regulatory perimeter."
Yeah, it's all very predictable, really, isn't it?
It is exactly like we said. I mean, it's not like you can't stop this. You can't stop this. You're just going to end up moving people to places which are slightly friendly.
I mean, the best thing they could do is embrace this technology, but I think they're, I get it. They're scared, right? They're afraid they're going to lose control. But by doing what they're doing, they are going to lose control a lot quicker than if maybe they came towards it.
Yeah, I think they're going to get blindsided by this. They're focusing so much on this, and there's other technology in the making at such exponential speed that's going to make most of their jobs sort of irrelevant, really, dematerialize it. But they won't see that coming.
No, they won't. So.
But that's good news. I mean, that shows that that's because the US decides to say no doesn't mean the rest of the world has said no.
Good. We like to end on a happy note, don't we?
Yeah. And I think, but you're right. This has been a bit of one of those weeks where everything seems to be coming at us. So, but you just got to hold on there. I think this is going to continue.
And I still think this, as if we take this just very generally, 1,000-foot view, I think this impacts generally the shitcoins probably a lot more than Bitcoin, is my sense of it. But that obviously remains to be seen.
And my other take on this, final take, is that I like this, actually. It's good to see them actually address this market in the US because they'll have to come up with some regulation, right? Even if it means to shut down everything. And if they do come out of this regulation and Bitcoin still succeeds, which it will, that'll be, then what do they do?
Yeah.
Then they either have to embrace it or people will find other ways.
Yeah, and again, we've had Gary Gensler come out again. I mean, this isn't new news, but he's reiterated again that every altcoin out there is, in his opinion, unregulated security. The only one that wouldn't be is Bitcoin.
Yeah. He's been saying that for a long time.
He has been saying that for a long time. Now, it's not, he doesn't set the rule of the law, right? The judicial system does. So that'll have to be decided ultimately by a judge. Although I'm sure his opinion will count. But still, this is my whole point. We've been saying it for ages. There's a lot of risk involved in the altcoins, regulatory risk. Now, Bitcoin will probably to some extent end up getting caught up in it. But I still think the risk is a lot lower there for Bitcoin than the rest of the coins.
And just remember, guys, I mean, every altcoin is being printed in somebody's home computer, to start with. And that's it. So if you think that's something you want to invest in, be really careful because you are doing it with one person. And that one person is the biggest point of failure. And then the companies build around it. And then they become the points of failure. And there's regulation. Whereas Bitcoin, that steed has bolted long ago.
Yeah, remember, if you're doing a deal and you can't tell who the patsy in the room is, it's probably you. So don't be the patsy.
Exactly. Good. No, that's good. Do we have anything else to talk about today, Tiago?
I don't think so, really. I think that just about covers the big stories.
Right. Good, it does, yeah.
Cool. All right, then. Well, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, have a lovely weekend. And obviously, as we said, if there's any feedback that you can give us to improve or change the format, please do let us know. And we will be introducing other formats as well. We'll do some, like we did with Jameson Lobb's article last week, we'll do some others in the future going forward, and keep up with some other aspects of the Bitcoin technology.
Cool.
All right.
Thanks, Sid.
Cheers, Tiago. Bye.